September 1st, 2006. A movie opens in theaters. Not in all theaters, though, in 130 theaters across 7 cities with no trailer, no ads, no press screenings, no poster in half the locations it's showing, no press kit, nothing. The director, Mike Judge, the guy who gave you Beavis and Butthead and Office Space, waited by his phone for weeks trying to get permission from the studio just to show a journalist the trailer for his own movie. But the call never came. The movie made $495,000 at the box office. $495,000. That's not a misprint. That's less than a moderately successful lemonade stand. It was, by every conventional metric, a complete disaster. But then something happened. It came out on DVD. People watched it. People shared it. People watched it again and said, wait a minute. This isn't a comedy. This is a documentary. This is a warning. This is a man who looked at America in 2006 and described 2026 with the specificity of someone who'd already been there. Mike Judge's response when people started saying this in 2016? Hey, I'm no prophet. I was off by 490 years. He said that in 2016, just before a one-time WWE-adjacent celebrity won the presidency. Today, on Checkpoint Thursday, we are making the full case. Idiocracy, released in 2006, buried by its own studio, discovered on DVD, elevated to cult classic, is not a comedy. It's the most accurate piece of American social commentary ever made, disguised as a movie about a man who wakes up in a future full of idiots. I'm Nate. Welcome to the Average Joe Nerdcast. And real quick, before we get going, if you're not subscribed yet, do that now. New episodes every Monday and Thursday. A movie from 2006 predicted everything, and we need to talk about it. Get to subscribing. Let's go. So real quick, for anyone who hasn't seen Idiocracy, and if you haven't, please press stop on this podcast right now and go and watch it. Don't worry, I'll wait. But here's the setup. 2005, the U.S. Army selects Corporal Joe Bowers, played by Luke Wilson, for a top-secret hibernation experiment. Why Joe? Because he is, statistically, the most average person in the entire military. Not smart, not dumb, perfectly, exactly, aggressively average. Joe and a woman named Rita get frozen in pods. The experiment goes wrong. Nobody wakes them up. They sleep for 500 years. They wake up in the year 2505. And what they find is America has gotten incredibly, spectacularly, comprehensively stupid. The most intelligent people reproduced less. The least intelligent people reproduced more. 500 years of that math later, and Joe Bowers, the most average man of 2005, is now the smartest person on Earth. The president is Dwayne Elizondo Mountain Dew Camacho, played hilariously by Terry Crews, a former professional wrestler and adult film star who won the presidency with charisma, spectacle, and absolutely no qualifications. The #1 TV show is called Ow, My Balls! It is exactly what it sounds like. The language has deteriorated into what the movie describes as a hybrid of hillbilly, valley girl, inner city slang, and various grunts. Crops are dying because they're being irrigated with a sports drink called Brawndo instead of water. Brawndow's marketing slogan? It's got electrolytes. No one can explain what electrolytes are or why plants need them. But Brawndow's got them, and water doesn't. So, the most popular restaurant is called Buttfuckers. It used to be called Fuddruckers. It evolved over 500 years into Buttfuckers. This is presented as inevitable. Every surface of every building is covered in advertising. Every product is branded. There is no silence that isn't filled with someone trying to sell you something. Mike Judge started developing this idea in 2001 after seeing two women in a Disneyland line screaming profanities at each other behind their strollers and thinking, what if this is where we're headed? He thought it was satire. He was being generous with the timeline. And here's a real quick break to hear from one of our sponsors. Are you tired of drinking water? Water has no electrolytes. Water doesn't care about your thirst. Water was here before civilization, and it'll be here long after. What has water done for you lately? Brawndo has electrolytes. What are electrolytes? They're what plants crave. What do plants need them for? Brawndo's got them. That's what matters. Brawndo, available in original, extreme original, and a new limited edition called Just Drink It, It's Fine. Brawndo, it's got electrolytes. Side effects may include crop failure, societal collapse, and an inexplicable inability to explain why you made this choice. But it's got electrolytes, not responsible for what happens to your plants. And hey, real quick, if you're enjoying this episode, then share it with one person. Honestly, given what this episode is about, getting more people to think critically feels like the entire point. Word of mouth is how independent podcasts survive. So please, send it to a friend. Now, back to the show. Now, before we get to the predictions, we need to talk about why this movie almost didn't exist. Because the story of how Idiocracy was suppressed is itself the most Idiocracy thing that has ever happened. Mike Judge, fresh off the cult success of Office Space, goes to Fox with the script for Idiocracy. Fox loves it. They fund it. They're excited. Then the movie gets made. Test screenings happen, the test audiences, and I want to be very clear that this is the real reported reason. Just don't get it. The jokes don't land for test audiences because the jokes require the audience to understand that they are the joke. A movie about people being too dumb to recognize satire tested badly because the test audiences were too dumb to recognize satire. You cannot make this shit up. But here's the other reason. The reason Terry Crews went on record about in a 2018 GQ interview. The movie made fun of real corporations by name. Starbucks was in it. Carl's Jr. was in it. Fox News was in it. These companies had agreed to let their names be used, thinking they'd get free advertising. They watched the movie and realized they were the punchline. In a movie about corporations having too much power, the corporations threatened to pull advertising from the corporation that made the movie. Fox, which is itself a corporation featured in the movie, buried the movie to protect the other corporations from being publicly mocked. The movie about corporate power was suppressed by corporate power. The movie about the media dumbing down the culture was buried by a media company because it was too smart. This is not a metaphor. This happened in real life back in 2006. The Guardian's critic John Patterson wrote about it at the time, perhaps because it expertly satirizes the jingoistic self-absorption that now passes for public culture, or perhaps because more people are sick of the modern America that Fox energetically helped to build than the Fox Corporation itself is ready to admit. The movie made just $495,000 in theaters. DVD sales were more than 20 times the theatrical gross. Because when people actually found it on their own through word of mouth, through independent film sites, they immediately understood that they were watching something very real. The corporations themselves knew what it was before the audience did, and they tried to make sure the audience never found it. So here we go. Let's roll the tape. I'm going to call out what Idiocracy showed us, and then I'm going to tell you what actually happened. You can keep the score. Prediction 1. A celebrity with no political experience wins the presidency on charisma and spectacle alone. President Camacho, former wrestler, former adult film star, speaks entirely in rally-style proclamations, fires a machine gun during his State of the Union address, is the President of the United States in 2505. In 2024, Hulk Hogan appeared at the Republican National Convention, ripped off his shirt to reveal a Trump-branded tank top, and delivered what can only be described as a wrestling promo in support of the nominee. The co-writer of Idiocracy, Ethan Cohen, said during the 2016 primaries that the film's predictions were converging on accuracy. Mike Judge said he was off by 490 years. Point? Idiocracy. Prediction 2. The language deteriorates into a hybrid of slang, grunts, and Valley Girl. The movie described this in 2006, the same year Twitter launched, 4 years before Instagram, 8 years before the word bae became mainstream, 12 years before TikTok brought us no cap, slay, and the complete replacement of sentences with audio clips. I'm not saying these words are bad. Language evolves. That's fine. But what I am saying is Mike Judge described it specifically in 2006. Point? Idiocracy. Prediction 3. The most popular entertainment is people getting physically hurt. Ow, my balls! A show where a man gets hit in the crotch repeatedly is the #1 program in 2505. Current reality TV includes Wipeout, American Ninja Warrior, countless obstacle course shows, and the entire genre of people falling down, which generates billions of views on YouTube and TikTok almost daily. We are one network executive away from, ow, my balls, being greenlit. Point? Idiocracy. Prediction 4. Every surface is covered in advertising. In the movie, there is not 1 inch of any building, vehicle, or public space that isn't branded or advertised. In 2026, Times Square, your phone, your streaming service that charges you money and shows you ads, the sponsored content in your newsfeed that looks like an article, the ad that plays before the YouTube video about how to avoid ads, the advertising embedded in podcasts, the advertising embedded in this podcast. Hi, thanks for listening. This show is brought to you by, I'm just kidding. Point? Idiocracy. Prediction 5. Crops failing because of anti-science decisions around water. In the movie, they irrigate with sports drink because it's got electrolytes, and can't seem to understand why the plants are dying. In reality, we've had ongoing debates about water management, climate denial, and agricultural policy that has prioritized corporate interests over science. California faced historic droughts. We've watched people argue against climate data because it's inconvenient. We've watched electrolytes become a billion-dollar wellness industry that sometimes gets suggested for things electrolytes do not help. Nobody is literally irrigating with Gatorade. Yet. But the underlying mechanism, denying science because a brand told you something felt better, that is very real. Partial point? Idiocracy. Prediction 6. The corporations run everything and no one questions it. In the movie, Carl Jr.'s slogan is, "Fuck you, I'm eating." The company runs the Department of Education. Starbucks offers full body service. There are no public spaces that haven't been sold to someone. In 2026, Amazon is a delivery company, a cloud computing company, a film studio, a grocery store, a healthcare company, and a pharmacy. Meta owns your social life. Google owns your search history. 3 companies, Walmart, Amazon, Costco, account for a staggering portion of American consumer spending. The top tech companies have market caps larger than most countries' GDP. No one questions it. We just keep using the apps. Point: Idiocracy. Prediction 7. The president threatens to execute someone for disagreeing with him. In the movie, President Camacho threatens Joe's life when Joe suggests that water, not Brawndo, might save the crops. The crowd turns on Joe instantly. In reality, back in 2024, after a retired general publicly criticized the nominee suggested the general should be executed for treason. I have covered this in another episode. I'm not going to dwell on it, but it's on the tape. Point: Idiocracy. Steve says he's been watching Idiocracy and he wants to know which character is supposed to be him. None of them, Steve. You're Steve. Steve says he identifies with Joe Bowers because he too is the most average person in the room. Steve, you know, that's actually the nicest thing you've ever said about yourself. Steve is now watching Ow, My Balls on YouTube. Steve, that's a real show now. It's called America's Funniest Home Videos. It's been on since 1989. We were always there, Steve. We were always there. So here's the part that nobody talks about enough. The most Idiocracy thing about Idiocracy isn't any single prediction. It's how the movie was treated. A film that argued corporations have entirely too much power was buried by a corporation because other corporations didn't like the jokes. A film that argued the media was dumbing down the culture was suppressed by a media company. A film about anti-intellectualism wasn't screened for critics. The people whose sole job was to think critically about films weren't allowed to see the film about what happens when we stop thinking critically. The cinematographer on the film said he had to keep it off his resume for years because it was considered a failure and a stain on his career. The co-writers said it was definitely disappointing. And then, slowly, through DVD rentals and word of mouth and people sending links to each other, and independent websites that weren't beholden to the same corporate relationships that Fox was, the movie found its audience. And not because Fox helped, in spite of Fox trying to stop it. Which means the thing that saved Idiocracy from being buried was the exact opposite of what Idiocracy predicted would happen. Real people talking to each other, sharing something they believed in, refusing to let the corporate machine have the last word. And you know what? That's actually kind of beautiful. Even if the movie's predictions about everything else turned out to be kind of right. One last ad break before we land this thing. You've been watching people fall down on the internet for free. Isn't it time you paid for that? Introducing Ow, My Balls! The premium streaming experience for fans of physical comedy, low stakes, and the simple joy of watching someone make a very bad decision and immediately regret it. Available on OuchMax, a subsidiary of Brawndo Tech Entertainment, a division of Buttfuckers Media Group. New episodes every day, because content never stops. Ow, my balls! It's got electrolytes. Rated TV MA for language, violence, and the mild existential horror of realizing you've been watching this for 3 hours. No refunds, no critics were screened for this product. So, is Idiocracy a documentary? Technically, no. It's a science fiction comedy made on a $3 million budget that made $495,000 in theaters before becoming one of the most watched cult films of the 21st century. But as a piece of social prediction, the celebrity presidency? Check. The degraded public discourse? Check. The entertainment built around pain and spectacle? Check. The corporate saturation of every public space? Check. The anti-science impulses dressed up in branded language? Check. The executive threatening critics? Check. The media burying inconvenient truths? Double check. Ironically, in the story of the movie itself, Mike Judge started developing this idea after seeing two women scream profanities at each other in a Disneyland line back in 2001. He thought he was writing a 500-year prediction. He was writing about the next 20. When people asked him in 2016 how he'd been so accurate, he said, "Hey, I'm no prophet. I was off by 490 years. That's the line. That's the whole thing. He wasn't predicting the future, he was paying attention to the present. He was watching the trends and following them to their logical conclusion, and nobody wanted to see it. Not in theaters, not at Fox, not in the test screenings, because the conclusion was very uncomfortable. The movie that was too early wasn't too early because it was too smart for its time. It was too early because it was right. And being right too soon is the most uncomfortable thing you can be in a culture that rewards certainty of the wrong kind. Camacho would have loved it. Joe Bowers would have wept. Mike Judge, I imagine, is somewhere watching all of this unfold with the deeply specific expression of a man who has been saying, "I told you so," for 20 years and finds absolutely no joy in being right. Go watch Idiocracy. If you haven't, go watch it right now. If you have, go watch it again and keep a tally. You'll probably lose count. Steve has finished watching Idiocracy and has thoughts. Steve, what are your thoughts? Steve says he watched the entire thing and then immediately watched the news and couldn't tell the difference. Yeah, Steve, that's the bit. Steve says he's going to water his plants now. With water, not Brawndo. Good job, Steve. Please do that. That is correct. That's all of us just doing the basic thing right. And that, my friends, is Checkpoint Thursday. Idiocracy from 2006. 130 theaters, $495,000. No trailer, no ads, no poster, buried by the very forces it was mocking. Is the most accurate piece of American social commentary of the last 25 years, disguised as a movie about a man who wakes up surrounded by idiots. The movie is on multiple streaming platforms right now. Go watch it if you haven't, and then come back and tell me which prediction hit you the hardest. Drop those over in the lobby. That's the Average Joe Nerdcast private Facebook group. I'll drop the link to the group in the show notes, or you can head straight over to Facebook and in the search bar, just type Average Joe Nerdcast, the lobby, and you will find the page. Join it, and let's debate it. Shout out to everyone who's been writing with the show. Your shares and reviews are how more people find this thing. And more people finding this thing is how we keep making it. If you've been enjoying the last few weeks of episodes, the heavy ones, the fun ones, all of it, please leave a review wherever you're listening. It genuinely makes a huge difference. And then subscribe if you haven't. New episodes drop every single week. Mainline Mondays go deep. Checkpoint Thursdays are where we play. Quick shout out to my player 2. Thank you for watching Idiocracy with me for research purposes and for not pointing out that we've now seen it 6 times. You're the reason any of this happens. I've been Nate. Stay gold, nerd bold. Drink water too, not Brawndo. It does not have electrolytes. It's just water, and it's fine. Drink it.